Now, you've been really vocal about your frustrations in getting a fight booked. How does it finally feel to be here?
Oh, it feels great, man. I'm just happy that we're able to fight. It's been a lot of stress. There's a lot of different things that we got to get done, the COVID related stuff. And it was tough to get in, and, it's tough while we're here. And it's just there's a lot of stress, but at the end of the day, if this is what it takes to have us fighting now, man, I'm happy to do it. Like, I'm just happy to be back in here.
Gary, we got questions from media from all around the world, so I'm just going to read them out to you, and you can just answer that, all right?
Let's do it.
First one is from Matt Scott of South China Morning Post. In terms of your stand-up, who have you been working with, and how different are you finding the mindset change from take them down to throw punches?
So John Danaher basically takes care of my entire MMA coaching, from striking to grappling, wall wrestling, all different kinds of facets of MMA. And we tend to always focus, no matter what it is that we're doing. Like, one day we may do something that's more related to boxing or kickboxing or wrestling or whatever the case may be, but it's always integrated into an MMA setting. It's never just an isolated thing. The only thing that we really train somewhat isolated is jiu-jitsu, because I have practices with a jiu-jitsu team. So we're always constantly integrating skills, and it's less for me, just learning how to punch and kick than it is. It's much more about how to integrate all of that into the type of MMA style that best suits me, which is to figure out how to use punches and kicks, or to avoid punches and kicks, and eventually get those takedowns that I need to employ my submission grappling. So it's not like, oh man, I got to learn to be a boxer. I got to learn to be a kickboxer. No, like, I got to learn to be a mixed martial artist so that I can actually use the skills that I already have, which are jiu-jitsu and submission grappling in the cage.
Talking about that, you got obviously a great team with you over there, Danaher and the Blue Basement. Who have you been working with in terms of MMA?
So I have a lot of different sparring partners, but as far as coach is concerned, like I said, John Danaher, head coach. But I have, there's also a Muay Thai guy, Jamie Crowder, that works with us quite a bit, who's also an MMA coach over there. So he's very helpful, and he's been, give some help in the striking department. But for the most part, different professional and amateur athletes. I also have guys, coming in that are, UFC fighters, or, other professional fighters from other organizations that come in as visitors. New York City tends to be like a pretty big hub. For this particular fight camp, I didn't get as much of that because not as many people are traveling in and out of New York City now. So it's been pretty homegrown. This fight camp has been pretty much just the guys that I'm used to in NYC. And my main training partner is Yu-Ting Hong. He's out here with me as my cornerman right now, because we could only have one cornerman, and I wanted to make sure I have somebody that I could actually do drills with. Unlike many other people, most people just kind of hit pads and stuff leading up to their fights, but I'm always very much like still actively sparring, leading up to the fight. I think maybe today will be the first day that I don't actually do some type of sparring. So I needed somebody to do drills with and stuff, and he's been great for that. He's one of my best training partners.
I go into this next question from Fight Game Asia. You've been out of action for over a year now. With everything that's been going on with COVID, how has this affected your development as an MMA fighter?
It's an interesting question. I think it affected everybody. It's hard to say that it didn't affect me in any way, but I definitely think that we've still been training. We've still been putting work in. I've still been developing skills and getting better. I would just say that when you don't have a fight ahead of you, you just don't have that same central focus on a particular thing, something upcoming, an opponent, or whatever the case may be, to really get your head, lined up in a particular direction. But one of the great things about having that time off, per se, where you don't have a fight lined up, is it really leaves you open to improve all of your skills. You don't have to feel like, hey, there's this one thing that I have to get better for this particular opponent. You just try to get everything better. So I think it's really good from a developmental standpoint. But as far as like the effects on me, it's been very stressful, the training environment. It's been harder to get different training partners in. Like I said, it's been harder to line up training sessions because they often have to be shorter and moved around because COVID restrictions and things like that. So it's definitely been tough, but it's been tough for everybody. I think it's stuff that everybody's had to deal with on some level, whether it be shutdowns in different countries or whatever the case may be. So I think I've found ways to continue to get better. So I'm happy with my progress over the months during COVID.
This question here before we go into the matchup with Koyomi. This one's from Matt Scott of South China Morning Post again. Were you surprised by Tan Lee's title win? What were your takeaways from that bout, given that you could possibly face both fighters in the future?
Yeah, wasn't surprised with the win of Tan Lee. I think I kind of called that. I don't know if I said it in an interview or if I posted it or something. I did expect Tan Lee to edge that out. I didn't think it was going to be like a killing or anything like that. I just thought he has a little bit of an edge in the striking department. He was going to be able to be a little sharper than Martin. And it turned out that that's kind of what happened. But it was a really back and forth fight. I think if anybody actually sits back and watches that whole fight, they'll realize that at intermittent points, either one of them could have been the victor. Even though it didn't go the full 5 rounds, I definitely think that, you do that fight, you play that fight back about 10 times. And I think they both get 5 wins out of it, So I thought it was a really, really close fight. And what was really cool for me, being an athlete that I know that I'm going to have to fight either one of them, moving forward at some point, regardless of who's first. What was cool for me is they were both tested really well in that fight, and I got to see vulnerabilities of both athletes. So that was great to see for me. I think especially for Tan Lee, because most of his fights have been much more dominant than that fight, and I think Martin tested him quite a bit more than in some of his previous fights. I got to see some holes that maybe I didn't see in previous fights. So I definitely feel a lot more confident going in fighting either of them now, seeing that performance, so that I kind of get a little bit of a better feel as to how to handle these athletes and how to put them in an uncomfortable place in the ring.
Man, any one of those two matchups would be crazy to watch. This one is from Tom Taylor, BJPen.com. Do you consider Koyomi Matsushima your toughest opponent in MMA so far?
Yeah, I think pretty much almost always, like the next fight and the next fight and the next fight, as long as you continue to win, pretty much you're always going to get a step up in competition. It's pretty rare that like you're going to take a fight and it's going to be, a lesser opponent as you're climbing your way up the ladder and working towards a title shot, right? So yeah, I definitely think it's a tougher challenge. It's a different challenge, than my previous opponent. I think the last opponent that I had was a pretty tough challenge as well. He had a little bit of a judo background and more of a boxing style. And now this, current opponent, Matsushima, has a little bit more of a wrestling background, and as far as the striking is concerned, more of like a karate style. So it's a very different thing to deal with and a very different threat. But I definitely think this is a very tough test. I think this is one of those ones out there where when you're looking at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy trying to transition into mixed martial arts, one of the things you wonder is, hey, what's going to happen when he runs up against a tougher wrestler that's maybe able to either stop him from taking him down or maybe control him for a little bit while they're on the ground and not give him the access to the submission attempts that he would normally have. And that's often a problem that stifles a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes transitioning into mixed martial arts. It's not quite the same that the way the grappling game works in mixed martial arts. So it could be a very difficult thing for me to deal with.
This one is from Fight Game Asia. You are now 5-0, and you've gotten so much better after every fight. How much better are you now than when you first started? And what has been the biggest change for you so far?
Yeah, hard to quantify exactly how much better I've gotten, over the past couple years or so that I've been sitting out. I would say a year and a half or so, but I think that it's impossible, like this early in my career. So I've been fighting maybe, I guess, like 3 years now, total. I think I started when I was like 26. So this early in my career, I think it's like impossible to have reached a plateau. So man, I think for at least the very first 5 years or so that I'm going to be doing mixed martial arts, there's guaranteed improvement. It's kind of like anything that you do. I don't care if you just picked up the guitar. I don't care if you just started training jiu-jitsu. I don't care if you just started doing MMA. The first 5 years, I mean, even if you're not doing everything perfect, you're going to get better. It's just so new that it's almost impossible. You'd have to have such a terrible sense of direction to not continue to get better. And that's always been my argument to all these guys as I'm coming up, like, me arguing, trying to get to the title shot, trying to convince them, hey, you want to fight me, right? It's like, hey, fight me now, because I'm guaranteed to have a steeper rate of improvement than pretty much anybody else in the division because of how new of a fighter I am. Anytime you're doing a new skill, I mean, the level of improvement is just so rapid because everything that you do is kind of a new skill. It's like anything. So I think that I'm still very rapidly improving, and I hope to continue to try to keep that up. It's always a struggle as you get better and better at a particular thing. You start to kind of reach that point where things start to flatten out and you're not learning as many skills and you're kind of polishing the skills that you already have and things. And that's kind of where I'm at with jiu-jitsu, right? But that's part of what we do is every day we're trying to innovate. Every day we're trying to bring in new concepts and consistently try to push the envelope as far as improvements going. So I can't quantify how much better I am or how I'm better than I was the last time that I got in the cage, but I definitely think that I am better.
Speak about that, man. You've obviously had to learn a lot more outside of submission grappling, but during this time of not competing in mixed martial arts, you were still very active in the submission grappling scene. Is that something that you'll always be doing, or would you at some point focus more on mixed martial arts?
Yeah, so my intention was to have my pretty much my sole focus be on mixed martial arts. It wasn't the grappling matches that I'm taking are pretty much just to fill the void whenever I'm not able to take a mixed martial arts bout. So grappling has taken a back seat now. Ever since I started fighting, grappling was like, an afterthought. It's like, okay, if I don't have a fight and I want to stay busy, we're going to do a grappling match. So grappling is not at the forefront of my brain. There are still, goals and things that I'd love to accomplish in grappling and people that I'd love to have matches with. It's a passion of mine. I do love it. But at the same time, like right now, my career and my focus is mixed martial arts. So that has to take a front seat to everything. I'm really focused on MMA and trying to get as much experience as I can in that. So I'm never going to like push back a fight so that I can take a grappling match. There would have to be, the only way I would do something like that, it would have to be something monumental. Say like Khabib or something was a potential matchup for me as a grappling match. Like, okay, yeah, like that's worth it. Like let's make that grappling match happen. But other than that, for the most part, my grappling career is not over, but it's kind of it's more of a side project for me now, and mixed martial arts is the main thing.
Kind of moving on to new challenges.
Yeah.
This one's from Jim Barcelone of Miami Herald. Back in the time where fans were allowed, what is it like competing in the States with fans, and then compared to now having to compete with not as much fans, minimal fans?
Yeah. So I'll say this. I think that me as an athlete, I have a little bit of an edge in this department, coming from a Brazilian jiu-jitsu background. In Brazilian jiu-jitsu, there are a few places where you would go to compete and there's, a stadium full of people. Not many though, maybe you go to ADCC and you have that kind of a feel. But there's a lot of like, especially in my earlier days of competing in competing in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, we would compete in these like really like intimate environments where like there's really not that many people, and grappling is not the same type of environment as MMA where when a fight kicks off, everybody starts screaming, kill him, punch him in the face, I want to see blood. Like it's not like that. Like often in a grappling match, the room goes dead quiet and you don't hear anything. And there's different environments. Some countries and places that you compete are different, but that freaked me out the first time that I felt it. Like I remember the very first time I competed professionally in jiu-jitsu, like and the room was quiet. I was like, oh, this is weird. Cause I was used to competing at tournaments and things where there's tons of noise and background and everything like that. But now it's a pretty normal thing. Like it's been a while since I've been in an environment like that, but it's pretty, I've experienced it. I know what it's like. I'm preparing for it. Often our training environments are much quieter and stuff now too. So I feel like I'm kind of used to that. I've never actually fought with no audience yet, but I've been a cornerman for a couple different fights where there was no audience leading up to this. So I got the feel for like what the environment's kind of like, how many people are there, and what the production kind of is like, because I've done some of that cornering. So I feel like it's not going to be as awkward as it might be for some other people. I feel like I'm pretty prepared for that. So, do I like having fans and like having the crowd around and everything like that? Do I think it brings an energy to the performance? Absolutely. But, I think I'm prepared to do business no matter what.
Now I got to ask you, you were talking about this potential Khabib grappling match. How do you see that one going?
Then I think if we ever had a pure grappling match, I'd pretty handily submit Khabib. Probably the same way that if I had like a pure wrestling match against somebody who is, an extremely dominant wrestler, more than likely they would beat me. But it would still be a fun, cool experience either way. I don't know. I don't see how anybody could debate that. People will because they're uneducated about martial arts. But a pure grappling match, it's something that I've been doing my whole life. I mean, he's been focused on MMA his whole life, so obviously he has, somewhat of an edge there. But in pure jiu-jitsu, I mean, it's hard to believe that, he'd be able to do anything other than maybe edge out like a draw or something, depending upon the rule set. If it was like maybe sub only and there was no, ref's decision or something, but maybe he could not get submitted. That would be the best hope that he would possibly have. But I think it would be a very dominant performance on my part if I ever fought Khabib in a jiu-jitsu or submission grappling context.
Breaking down that, I know Khabib obviously has been working on mixed martial arts a lot, and mixed martial arts grappling is so different when there's punches and elbows involved. But what do you see in the submission grappling game? Obviously, he hasn't done an exhibition match in a long time. What submission do you see yourself getting him in?
I think for Khabib, probably the thing that he doesn't encounter more than anything else would be leg locks. Like, I think that's like it's a very underutilized thing in mixed martial arts. So the likelihood that he's in a mixed martial arts room where there's anybody like attacking his legs consistently in a way where he'd be prepared for a threat like that is probably minimal. So I would say that
Combat Sambo is known for the leg locks as well. They dive for the knee bars and the toe holds.
Sure. Sure. I mean, that's nice. Don't get me wrong, but he's been spending the last decade training mixed martial arts. I highly doubt that he's in a combat sambo room in the last decade. I mean, I could be wrong about that. I don't think any of his training partners that he's training with on a day-to-day basis are going after leg locks. This is what I'm trying to communicate. There in sambo, there are some leg locks, but it's completely different than being in a room like I'm in on a day-to-day basis with the best jiu-jitsu guys in the world trying to submit each other with leg locks all the time. I mean, there's just the level of preparation for something like that is just, it's completely different. So I think that would be the most obvious place where there would probably be a discrepancy in skill. He's probably well prepared for most other submission threats because most other submission threats, upper body threats, are used pretty regularly in MMA. So
I don't take that one personally. I see you were a little bit offended when I talked about the leg locks and
Oh, no. That's all good, man.
All right. Follow up here from for the fight against Koyomi. This is from Fight Game Asia. In your mind, do you expect a tough fight where you'll be tested in all areas, or are you visualizing an easy victory? How important is winning this fight for you?
Okay, so let's talk about visualization for a minute. I think it's very important when you're visualizing a fight or a challenge ahead of you to not only imagine situations where you just crush that challenge or, just walk right through whatever that challenge is. I don't think that prepares your mind very well for adversity. So visualization is an important process for, I think, any athletic endeavor or any challenge that you're going to face. I think it helps prepare your mind. But if you're only using visualization for the purposes of convincing yourself that you're going to not encounter any struggle and just win with ease and not have any problems, I think you're not adequately preparing yourself for said challenge. Yeah, sure. Sometimes it may be like that. Sometimes my last fight, I was able to get a hold of a single leg fairly quickly and get right into a leg lock. I mean, it's still challenging, but I walked right through that challenge very quickly and didn't encounter a lot of adversity. I didn't take any big hits. I didn't get held down. There was no problems. Right. And so great. Okay. But I don't think it's a good thing to set yourself up mindset wise like that. I think it's very important to recognize that, hey, man, it's a fight. A lot of things can happen. You may be in some bad positions. You may have to struggle out of those bad positions and eventually win. So I visualize many things leading up to fights. I visualize, things like my last fight where I very quickly submit Matsushima. And then I visualize other situations where maybe he takes me down, a little bit of a scramble ensues and I have to fight out of it. And maybe I fight a hard 3 rounds of back and forth, and I have to struggle to win that fight. And I think that's really important to prepare myself in that way, whether it's going to happen or not. I think that my mind has to be ready to meet that challenge. So that's what I'm visualizing. I'm visualizing everything. I think anything and everything could be a possibility. I think I could sustain damage. I think I could get taken down. I think all of these things could potentially happen in a fight, and I'm ready for it regardless. What I hope to do, what I plan to do, is make it as quick and efficient as I did my previous fight. But I'm ready for anything, and I'm visualizing everything.
This one here is from Tom Taylor of BJPenn.com. The expectation is that the winner of this fight could earn a shot at the new champ, Ton Lee. Do you feel ready to compete at the championship level at this stage in your MMA career?
Yeah. So this will help. I forgot the last part of the last question too, which was, what does this fight mean to you? So this fight is a big deal comparative to my other fights. At least in the progress of my career. I think nobody's told me this. Nobody said, "Hey, Gary, if you win this fight, you get a title shot." Nobody said that to me, but I think it's highly likely just based on the logic of the situation, considering he fought for the title before and did very, very well, and he's like I think he's like number 2 ranked or something in the division. So because of that, number 3. So because of that, like, I feel like it's pretty, I don't know who else is going to challenge for the title, but I think it's very likely that I end up fighting for the title. Do I think I'm ready for a title shot? Absolutely. I think that I've gotten very acclimated to mixed martial arts and feeling like what that's like and integrating my skills and putting them together in a mixed martial arts context. I feel ready. Do I think like I'm consistently improving and, in the next 2 to 3 years, I'm going to be even more ready or even better than I am now? Absolutely. But man, I think at this stage in my career, I can take that fight with confidence that I'm going to win in most with a high probability. So man, I absolutely feel ready for that fight with Ton Lee, or if they get a rematch or something like that, and something else happens, whoever. I've studied pretty much everybody in the division. I feel ready to fight anybody in the division. So whoever's going to be the title holder when I step in there, I'm ready to go.
This was a follow-up on what you just mentioned about Martin and Ton Lee. This was from Tom Taylor. A lot of people believe Martin deserves an immediate rematch with Ton Lee. Do you think he deserves that opportunity?
Man, I definitely think there's room for a conversation of a rematch between Martin and Ton Lee. Like, would that potentially hold back my title opportunity for a period of time? Yeah, but whatever. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I'm not going to just say whatever I want to say just for my career. I think when you watch that fight, if anybody goes back and watches the whole thing and they're not just going to see like the highlights of Ton Lee's victory, I think you'll see a pretty back and forth fight. And considering how dominant of a champion Martin has been, and how long he's been in that space, and he's, challenged for other belts. And the dude, it's not like he got smoked, out there. He actually, honestly, before he lost, kind of had Ton Lee on his back foot, and it looked like Martin might have been, coming forward for a victory. He needed a couple more clean shots, but he ended up getting caught coming forward. And, that's what happens, man. Sometimes you're going to get finished that way. So, man, I can't see anybody getting upset over, an immediate rematch with Martin and Ton Lee, or thinking that, Martin doesn't deserve that. I think only somebody who is unknowledgeable about the division and Martin and that fight would say something like that.
This one from Jim Barcelona of Miami Herald. You've done submission grappling and mixed martial arts. Would you ever consider pro wrestling? It's a good look with the Fu Manchu.
Interesting question. Yeah, man, sure. I think that would be kind of fun. I was never super into professional wrestling when I was a kid. My next door neighbor, Jared Seals, that I grew up with, he was super into it. And that was, somebody asked me what my first my first martial arts experience was the other day. And I often say that it was middle school wrestling and stuff. But when I thought back to it, it's oh, that's kind of my first martial arts experience, was me 2 years younger than my neighbor, just getting thrown in different wrestling moves on his trampoline that I had no idea what was going on. So, man, I think professional wrestling is a really fun sport, and it's really entertaining. It's a cool thing. I've been to some local shows. I've been to, professional shows, and it just seems like a good time, man. And I've always really been interested in acting and things like that. I did that when I was in school. And I really love the performance aspect of what we do. So it's like the performance aspect, minus the reality of the fighting. And Is it something that I do? I think so. I think there's room, there's a window of opportunity for that in my career. I don't know how interested in it I am. I'd have to see, but I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think I have a pretty good personality for something like that.
What role did you play in school?
Oh, a bunch, man. We did a few different musicals. I was Pippin in Pippin. I was Troy Bolton in High School Musical. Oh. I was the dentist in Little Shop of Horrors. I did a bunch of stuff when I was in high school, man, and a lot of people don't know that about me, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with that kind of stuff. I did choir. I did all different kinds of things, performance art. I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we'd like to see more of that from you. Yeah, Fight Game Asia. With this question, have you studied Matsushima style at all? What is your opinion of him as a fighter, and what is his biggest strengths?
Man, yeah, I studied Matsushima a lot. I'm not really studying too much anymore this close to the fight. I find it useful to study an opponent like kind of early on, but as the fight approaches, continuing to watch tape and things like that, I think just makes you kind of second guess yourself and makes you a little bit more anxious than you need to. So I haven't looked at tape of his since early on in the fight camp. But yeah, man, I think he's got a really interesting style. It's something that not a lot of people mix together, the karate style and wrestling. It's because it's often difficult. It's often difficult to mix karate and wrestling because one requires distance and distance management, and then the other one kind of requires closing the distance, right? So it's an interesting mix of skills. In some ways, they kind of complement one another because when you fail to create the distance that you need for karate, well, now you have your wrestling, right? But he kind of uses it in a different way. He keeps distance before he goes for his takedowns, which is odd. Most people look to get a little bit closer before they shoot in, but it seems to kind of explode from far away for a lot of the takedowns, and it tends to work for him. Most of the time, I would say conventionally, I would caution against that, shooting from farther away because it gives your opponent a little bit more of a read. But I think that it's worked for him in his career a number of times in all the fights that I've watched. It's been quite effective. So there's no, it doesn't seem to have had too many negative repercussions for him. As far as strengths and weaknesses, I think that was the tail end of the question there. Yeah, man. I mean, I think as far as weaknesses are concerned, anybody who I fight is always going to be easier for me to submit because that's my specialty. And I don't think there's anybody in the world that I'm ever going to fight on this planet that's going to be able to meet the challenge of my submission grappling. So that's obviously something that I can capitalize on. And as far as his strengths are concerned, his distance management is just exceptional. He does a really good job of keeping distance and, kind of staying out of danger and clipping people as they're coming in and, exploding into takedowns and things like that. So it's a pretty interesting style that he's put together. It's very unique, not like anything I've really ever seen before.
This one here is from Singapore Strike Sports. You're well known for your submission skills. Do you have a single favorite submission?
A single favorite submission? It's always hard to say. I'm not a big fan of favorites overall. There's a few things in life that I have a immediate, thought of a favorite. As far as tried and true submissions, I always go with the rear naked choke because it's kind of final. It's like once that's locked in, like it's pretty much over, So that's kind of what I was known for early in my career. The Lion Killer, Mata Leon, that was my signature finish for many years. Over the years, I kind of started developing a very strong leg lock game. So I started inverted heel hooking a lot of people. So that's always a strong submission of mine as well. So I'm a big fan of leg locks and inverted heel hooks specifically as far as submissions are concerned too. So if I had a favorite and a close second, it would probably be rear naked strangles and inverted heel hook.
Now, someone you got a little bit of history with and won championship is Shinya Aoki. You beat him in a grappling match. How do you think you would do against him in mixed martial arts if you fought? Would lightweight be something you would consider doing in the future?
Absolutely, man. I'm really excited for that potential matchup. Obviously, I have things to do first. I think the first thing to worry about is winning the title in my own division. But then once I get into the realm of like, okay, I have the title and we can start looking elsewhere, I think one of the first cool fights to take, instead of just challenging for the title at 70, which I would love to do also, would be taking that Shinya Aoki fight. And I think if he wants it, it's definitely a really cool matchup to make. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to him because there's no reason why he would have to take a fight like that, considering we're in different divisions. But if it's something that if something he thinks is exciting, I think the fans would think is exciting. I think it gives him a rare opportunity, because he gave me the opportunity to have a pure grappling match with him, to fight him in his preferred sport, which is mixed martial arts. And man, I think that would, as far as one championship's concerned, I think that might be one of the toughest fights that I could have on the roster. And there's a few reasons for that. A lot of people would probably disagree because he does have that, that grappling background. People, I already submitted him. So people, oh yeah, he's just going to submit him again. Maybe, but man, I'll tell you, when I had that grappling match, I felt, Shinya, and I felt his grappling ability and how difficult it was to move when he tries to control you. And man, I could see in an MMA context where punches are allowed, like that would be, it would have been a tougher fight. And I think that at that stage of my career in mixed martial arts, like if I had just, first fight Shinya Aoki, that would have been a really difficult fight. Now that I'm a little bit further along, I think I have the skills to beat him, but he's a tricky dude, man. Every so often he pulls out some really, really slick jiu-jitsu and controls people really well. And I really look forward to that challenge, regardless of what other people think. That excites me.
Tom Taylor from bjpen.com with this question. You mentioned that you've studied the top guys in your division. Other than yourself, who do you think has the strongest grappling?
Strongest grappling. So it's in terms of, I guess I would have to go with like maybe Gafarov, but it's not submission grappling. It's more of like a wrestling style of grappling. Uses a little bit of submissions here and there. And I've seen him throw people with Kimuras and, attack rear nakeds and things like that. So probably Gafarov if I had to guess, but Martin does a really good job of integrating grappling into what he does. I think that Christian Lee is also, Christian Lee's technically fighting 70 now, but he was fighting 55 for a while. I think is he number one on the rankings for 55 still?
I'm not sure.
I think he was at one point.
Number two.
So so like Christian Lee is also very, very good. Again, it's more of an integral style. It's not like I think like pure submission grappling, like he can touch me. But from a mixed martial arts standpoint, like those guys are very competent and very tough. So if I had to, I would say like, from more of like a wrestling grappling, Gafarov, and then or Gafarov, I don't know how to pronounce it, and then Christian Lee and Martin Nguyen have impressed me, and at least in their ability to use grappling in an MMA context.
Now going back into this Matsushima matchup, this one's from Singapore Strike Sports. Are you looking for a TKO or a submission win for this one?
Man, as far as I'm concerned, TKOs and submission wins are just as good as one another. There's different aspects to each. One requires a little bit more time and damage over time. And then the other one kind of just requires me to get an opponent in a perfect position to eventually get the finish. Both are good as far as I'm concerned. That's how I've won every fight in my career so far, is either one of those. And I feel very comfortable and confident winning either way. I feel like submissions for me sometimes are a little less work, but I've struggled to get submissions in the past. When I fought Rahul Raju, I had a bunch of different submission attempts, and it took a while to get a hold of them with a submission. So it can go either way, man. I'm looking to use all of my skills equally. I'm not going to go out there and just try to do a jiu-jitsu with this guy. I'm not going to go out there and just try to hit him. I'm going to do a little bit of both, and whatever I feel is appropriate at the time and is best at the time.
This one's from Matt Scott of South China Morning Post. What has sucked most about 2020?
A lot of things, man. But the most, I would say like closing my gym down. That was that sucked a lot. I opened a brand new gym, built up a bunch of stuff, did painting, and it was going to be like I had a cage in there. It was a really exciting kind of a thing for me to have a spot like that. And, the business owner that was renting out the place that I was subletting from. I ended up going bankrupt because he shut down for COVID. So I could no longer occupy the space. And, it wasn't just about losing the money and the investment and everything like that. And it was also just about, my gym, losing its home for the first time and not having a realistic follow-up where I could just go open somewhere else because of the way that things were going, man. It was pretty depressing, for a while, for me to have to deal with that. And for a lot of people that I care about to have to deal with that, that was frustrating, man. I hated that.
Any possible locations in the near future?
Yeah, man. I reopened in North Brunswick at inside of a UFC gym. So we're back up and running again for now, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be another shutdown. So, we're in a better situation now though, where these guys, basically, if there's a shutdown, they put us on hold, and I'm not responsible for paying any money or anything like that. So it's a much more responsible business environment than I would have been in if I would have tried to just reopen in my own facility or something like that. So I think we have a pretty good thing set up for the future, regardless of what happens COVID related. So I'm happy about that. I think the gym is in a much safer spot than it was before. Both financially and just, where and the type of place that it's in. It's kind of interesting now to have access to a whole gym instead of just the jiu-jitsu mats. So it's been a pretty cool, experience in a way. Like it sucked to be away for that long, but now that we're reopened in this new space, I'm pretty happy with, the way that things are going.
Man, that's fantastic to hear. I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
You've mentioned in a recent interview that you're no longer feeling things out anymore or testing the waters with striking. Can you elaborate more on that? Are you that much more confident in your striking?
Well, it's not so much about that. It's just I'm not much more confident standing in front of somebody in a cage and getting punched in the face. It's not. I guess a part of it is, learning how to strike and learning, defensive maneuvers and all that kind of stuff. Like, obviously that's necessary. It's not like all of a sudden I'm like, I think I'm some kind of Jedi in there, and I'm going to be like knocking people out left, right, and center. That's not really what I mean when I say, I feel comfortable. What I mean is that, like, it's not as new of an experience to me now to stand in front of somebody and have punches thrown at my face. So I don't feel the need to go out in a mixed martial arts bout and test the waters, quote unquote, and like, oh, let's see what we can do here, and I'll throw some punches. He's going to throw some back. It's like, no, I'm coming in with the goal of beating this guy right away, and not in a rushed way, in an efficient way, in the best timing that I know how. But I'm not looking to go out there and, like, I don't need to prove anything other than that I'm better than this guy, and that's it. I don't need to like, put on a striking show or anything like that. And if that's what happens, because I think that's what's necessary in the fight, great. I just think I'm much more prepared from an experience perspective now. I've had that much more sparring. I've had that many more fights now, where I've felt these sorts of things. And it's going to be a new experience because I've been away for a while. It's been a 1.5 year layoff. But right now, we'll see how I feel after the fight. But right now, I feel very, very well prepared and not like I need to test anything right now. So I'm going to go out there and win.
We got one last question from Jack Wanan from Knockdown News. As we head into the new year, do you have any specific career goals about 2021?
Specific career goals. So just based off of the way things are going, and if things continue to go in a way where we can continue to fight and continue our careers, with COVID aside or whatever the case may be, and I'm able to continue the trajectory that I'm on for 2021. I think very realistically, I would fight for the title. That would be the first thing. And then I think it's quite possible I would fight for a second title in 2021, depending upon the way that things worked out. So, I mean, by the end of 2021, I could very well be looking at holding the 155 as well as 170-pound title, if all things work out great. So that's where my sights would be set. Obviously, my first sight has to be set on winning the 55-pound title. So, one objective at a time. But if you're asking me to project a year into the future, I think it's very realistic for me to be there.
Man, that would be amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Gary. All the best this Friday night.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.